I didn't even know it was happening until it was too late. Like I had reached the point and past it. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to my channel. I'm Nanurl, and this is Unpacked Angles with me, where we're focused on widening the perspective on all things UX and more. And today, let's just get right into it. I want to talk about burnout. So I'll be talking about what burnout is, my experience with it. Unfortunately, I have very vivid memories of my experience with it. So we'll get into that, and I'll talk about how to avoid it. But if you've already gotten to that point, I'm gonna also cover how to recover from it, or at least what helped me to recover. So let's talk about what burnout actually is. Apparently, experts don't all agree on the exact definition of burnout, but it's very clear that prolonged and excessive stress is the main ingredient in its manifestation. Burnout is characterized by exhaustion, like both mentally, physically, and emotionally. You can feel very emotionally drained at this point, feel like you have no energy, you're unable to cope with a lot of things, and it often manifests itself as physical pain, and oftentimes results in gastrointestinal problems, so like stomach issues. It's also characterized by alienation from work-related activities. At the point of burnout, everything that has to do with your job is just, it's terrible. Like it's something that you have a very terrible reaction to. Your job becomes a lot more stress inducing. Anything related to your job, including like your coworkers, can like trigger a really negative response, a lot of cynicism, and things can become very just frustrating. And so naturally, this results in emotionally distancing yourself from work and everything that has to do with work. And another characterization of burnout is reduced performance, and not just at work, but with everything. So basically, you're unable to do things well at work and at home. Your performance is shot. This comes with a lot of negative feelings, just a lot of negativity, trouble concentrating, and just a lack of energy. Because experts don't actually agree on a set definition, it's hard to actually self-diagnose. There's not really a set way of doing that. There are established questionnaires, one being this one right here that I'm really not sure how to pronounce, but it is abbreviated as MBI. And this one is available to a lot of professional groups, but it was also created for research and not necessarily for like helping to diagnose in medicine. There are also a number of online questionnaires as well, but they tend to not be as reliable because the symptoms that you experience within burnout are also very similar to other things as well. So what you're experiencing may be actually a symptom of something else. The symptoms of burnout are close to and can be actually coupled with depression, anxiety disorders, or chronic fatigue syndrome, and even other physical illnesses as well. In addition to that, it can also be a side effect of medication that you may be taking. So it's just kind of up in the air. When it comes to depression and burnout, they're very, very close. Just because you're burnt out doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed, but being burnt out can increase your risk of depression. So because the symptoms are very close to each other when it comes to depression versus burnout, you got to really be careful when it comes to diagnosing like which is which. Because with burnout, you want to send people home to like have them rest and take care of themselves and just be at home like sleeping because you really need to get some sleep. But with depression, you may not want to treat it that same exact way. And so we have a chance of misdiagnosing ourselves if we're not careful here. So it's really important to make sure that we're not doing that, so that we're not prescribing the wrong treatments for ourselves. It's definitely helpful to work with a doctor on this to really figure it out if we can. So when I burnt out, I had been without health insurance for a while, so I did not have a regular primary care physician, and so I never actually got diagnosed. I also didn't realize how serious of a condition this was, and so I didn't really pay close attention to anything that was happening at the time. And going to the doctor was not something that I thought was important or on my radar because of what was happening. I just didn't think it was that serious. Also, I didn't even know it was happening until it was too late. Like I had reached the point and past it already. So I was kind of late on picking that up. It happened kind of slowly over time, but it escalated drastically within the time of 1 month. So during this 1 month, I was working ridiculous hours. Literally, any hours that I was awake, I was doing work. I did not take regular breaks. I did not go on vacation. Like in the past few months leading up to that, I was also barely sleeping. So when I say my waking hours, those were a lot of hours because I was not getting a lot of sleep. And when I was sleeping, I was not sleeping well. I had a really struggly living situation and I was sleeping on a couch. And in this environment, there were animals that were around me in the nighttime. So they were making noise or like touching me and stuff. And like, it just was not easy to get sleep. When I say animals, I'm just talking about cats. I was not in a barn. Like these are not farm animals. It was just cats, just two. But I don't really like cats. So I was also not exercising. I was not having fun. I was not like being social and hanging around people that really fill me up, you know? I wasn't doing any of those types of activities. And on top of all of that, I was struggling financially. So clearly you hear, you know, about my living situation. I was not in the best place as far as money. And so I was really worried about that. And because of that, also, you know, eating really well and like nutritiously was not something that I was doing at that point either. So my diet was trash. I had so much anxiety around my financial situation, my living situation, just my whole situation, period, that it gave me stomach issues. It affected me physically. And so I was only eating once a day. I like literally lost 10 pounds in that month alone. So clearly this situation that I was in was not the best at all. It was not the healthiest at all. And just on top of everything, I'm an introvert. I like my space. My space affects me very strongly. And this was not the best for that. So yeah, I was living ridiculous. Like this was my life for a little bit. And I began to have really strong visceral reactions toward anything that had to do with work. So any work-related things or work-related people just elicited a very, I don't really know how to describe it, but it was a very strong emotional response. But even so, I knew I really loved what I was doing. So I kept at it. And so even though I wanted to work, it was very difficult to do. There were actually times when I couldn't. So I would be sitting in front of my computer and like working, but not actually getting anything done. I had a lot of mental blocks and no energy whatsoever to really think straight. There was so much self-doubt during that period. I made a lot of mistakes because of my inability to actually concentrate and to get things done the way I normally perform, the way I normally do. And so that was a cycle, right? It was just like lots of self-doubt, not performing well, making mistakes. Then because of those mistakes, more self-doubt. It was just like never ending. So it got to a point where I just became very detached from everything, really, but from work especially, but also from my social life, from my friends, from everything. There was a point where I did get to thinking very dangerously and very darkly. Suicidal tendencies is not a symptom of burnout. However, it is a symptom of depression. So clearly things were super serious at this point. And I feel like it was at this point where I really knew something was wrong. So like if I'm thinking ending it, just like ending everything is better than what I am just doing right now, like work, which sounds so wild to me right now, but at the time it was reality. It was just real life. I don't really know how to explain it, and I know it might sound ridiculous, but in the moment it is just real. But that was a serious situation. I didn't feel like I had good days anymore, and that was the year I turned 30. Y'all, that was my 30th birthday year and month. So sad. I'll never get that back. But it's fine. I kept pushing. Even through all of that, I kept pushing because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to work hard. You're supposed to work through it, push through it to the end. Don't stop, never give up. Like, if you want to make it, right? Like, are you serious? Are you serious about this? Do you really want this? Well, you got to keep going, right? Shaking my head right now. In conclusion, just like ending the story, that shit was terrible. It was a horrible experience. 0 out of 5 stars. Would not recommend to anyone ever. Was not enjoyable. And I never want to be there again. And so I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't get there again. One positive that did come from it, though, is that I now knew the signs. So I was able to recognize for myself whenever I was getting close to that point again and understand what I needed to do in order to nip it in the bud. So that was my experience. And to make sure that, you know, nobody goes through that, if I can, I want to keep you as far away from that place as possible. And so I have a few tips on how to avoid burnout. And I've also provided some resources in the description about burnout and its symptoms and how to avoid it and what to do when you're going through it. So please feel free to check that out as well. Some of the tips I pulled from there, so they go into more detail in those articles that I have linked. And so please feel free to dig in. First and foremost, you gotta know the symptoms, right? Know the signs of burnout so that you can recognize them if you're starting to kind of feel that way or get close to being in that space. Know what they are so that you can act quickly. Also, keep yourself healthy. Exercise, meditate, sleep, eat well, be nutritious, treat your body kindly. I feel like I cannot do all of this talking right now because there are a few things in each one of those categories that I have been pretty struggling with recently that I need to get on top of. I could for sure be getting better at all of the above, but I know that these things do help. Also, take breaks, okay? Get away from your computer. If you got PTO, take PTO. Like, do not leave that shit on the table, please, all right? If you die tomorrow, they will have you replaced. The world does not stop. So take your PTO, sis. Take your PTO, bro. All right. Some organizations have recognized, especially with COVID, how often people are working and how often their employees are getting burnt out. Buffer, for instance, instituted 4-day work weeks at their organization when COVID was ramping up in May. At Figma, we have COVID recharge days often and are encouraged to take time off if we need to take time off and if we need to take a break and if we need to step away from our computer to do that. And I'm telling you, do that. You gotta prioritize your health first, and there are so many things going on in the world. I feel like I keep saying this over and over again in these episodes, but there are, and it's not like we can't sit there and ignore everything that's happening and act like it does not affect us all on a personal level. Everything that happens in the world, kind of getting on my soapbox just a little bit here, bear with me, but everything that happens affects people. Good for y'all who can compartmentalize, but not everyone can do that. I also don't fully believe that compartmentalization, is that a word? Compartmentalizing? Y'all know what I mean. I don't really know if that's healthy or not, but that's like another subject that we can talk about if you want to. But anyways, long story short, take a break, take time off, do you, and don't just do work. And then also, you know, a great tip for avoiding burnout is to actually work at a place where you like the people. So if you can, if you are privileged as to be able to find a place where you're actually working with people or working on teams who are encouraging and positive and motivating, I would recommend going over there and staying over there for some time, and also doing fun things outside of work with your coworkers virtually now, or safely physical distanced. But you know, it can't all just be work. It just can't. If you disagree with me, hit my comments and I guess state your opinion if you like, but just know that you're not going to change my mind. It's cool that we have differing opinions though, so let me know. Now, if you have already reached the point of burnout and you're there and you're wallowing, I'm so sorry, first of all. I feel you 100%, and I know you're struggling. I really do. Everyone may be different in how they respond, especially if there are other things in play as well on top of the burnout. And so I'm going to give you some tips as far as like what helped me get through my stint with burnout. Tip 1, step the away. Excuse the French. But for real, like step away. Now, I actually burnt out more than once, and so much for me knowing what the signs were beforehand and being able to nip that in the bud well, right? Like it happened more than once. But the second time wasn't as deep and serious as the first, kinda. I was in a different like physical location, so it was just a little bit different. But yeah, for the first time, I took a break. I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks. I stepped away, didn't do any work, or like tried not to think about work. And during this time, I actually did not get that much rest. I didn't get as much rest as I needed to. At this point, I was driving across the country during one of the weeks, and so that in and of itself is exhausting during and after the trip. And then I had maybe like a week and a half to get real rest. That didn't actually happen as much as it needed to, I don't think. Yeah, so tried, and for the second time I was nearing / at burnout. I wouldn't say I was like completely like over the hump and just flailing as I was the first time, but that second time I was pretty much there, and I recognized that. Like it was very apparent to me, even though I didn't want to be there again. I knew that I was, and I knew it quicker than I had before. And so this time I actually stepped away from the position. I don't know how many of you have watched or listened to the episode about how Unpacked Angles came to be. So the origin story, I'll link it up here. But if you haven't, I talk about how I worked at a super early, super small startup. And so this was that environment, that experience. So I was very much in the startup, speaking to other folks and trying to get people on board with our product. I was very much into that early process. And so that's kind of the work environment and situation where I was coming from. And this time around, I decided I needed to step away completely. And when I did, I stopped everything. I did not think about anything related to work, to UX, and I did this for 12 weeks this time. I did absolutely nothing but talk to my therapist, because she was definitely needed at that point. Definitely was needed before too, but glad I had her then. I am on the search for a therapist, by the way. If you know any Black women who are therapists that do teletherapy in New York or for clients in New York, please tell them to hit me up or send their information my way. Need that. And it was really the best decision ever that I think I've made for myself in quite some time. It truly was. And so while you are away, rest. Gotta get that rest. So literally sleep. All right, so at this point you're probably not sleeping as much as you should. So sleep, get that shut eye. So that's what I did. And I also meditated my ass off. It got to a point where I did not need the guided meditation anymore. I could just literally do it on my own. I use Headspace for meditation, so if you're looking for an app, there you go. But yeah, so I rested. I also did things that filled me up. So do what fills you, right? For me, that looked like a whole bunch of different artsy projects. So I painted a lot. I enjoy painting, and so I did a lot of painting. I did like oil pastel work and just had a lot of fun with it. I also read a lot of books that I wanted to for leisure. I watched a shit ton of Netflix shows, a shit ton of anime for sure, and listened to a whole bunch of podcasts that I enjoy. I also journaled quite a bit. I was journaling before too, but I kept it going after, the burnout to really just kind of work through my emotions there. And I spent time with family. That's when I went to Japan to visit my brother. So if you actually haven't seen that trip, I shared that a few episodes ago, so check that out. I also got to know myself again. I experienced a lot of self-doubt while I was going through the different bouts of burnout that I went through. And so just really getting back to me and knowing my strengths and getting clarification on that, or reaffirmation on who I am and like what I am good at and where I do fit in, was just really helpful. I love personality tests. I love, different tests that talk about your strengths and your leadership style and your working style. And so I took a whole bunch of those and enjoyed myself. I also reached out to a few people who are close to me, who know me really well, and asked them, what they thought I did better than anyone else in the world. And it was really interesting to get feedback from people who know me, and who know me well on what I do really well as Nanurl. And so that was pretty cool. So it was just really all about remembering who I was and getting back to myself. And the last thing I did was give myself a lot of grace. Lots and lots and lots of grace. Okay. And I would recommend that you do that too if you're in a place where you're burnt out. In the Black community, especially, unfortunately, mental health is still very stigmatized. But look, okay, do not play yourself out here. If you are experiencing anything that you feel is off, if you have the means to seek help, seek help. For me, there's still a slightly sour taste in my mouth when I think about, the startup world and VCs and capital. Just thankfully, where I'm at right now has been a complete 180 in terms of like the experience that I'm having, and that's been pleasant. But in this world, right, there is this thing called hustle porn where it's just like you always got to be on the go. It's just like hustle hard, hustle fast. I'm asleep when I'm dead, break things, whatever. You know what they be saying. All of this hustle porn is very prominent in this world, and it's gross. So if you are in that world, please do not fall for the hype. I work hard. I also play hard, but I do not play unless I feel like I have worked hard enough. But I was also fooling myself because I never feel like I'm working hard enough. Don't fool yourself, okay? You need play, so play. You also need sleep, so sleep. It is okay to act like a human being. I promise you. And the systematic and institutional racism and inequality that makes us feel like we can't. Us as in Black people, other people of color, women, all the marginalized groups. I just really needed to get that off of my chest. But yeah, give yourself a lot of grace because you're gonna need it. My parting question for you today is, have you ever experienced burnout or experienced the symptoms of burnout? And if so, what recovery tactics have worked well for you? I would love to know. Let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for y'all today. Thank you so much for tuning in. It was great having you here. I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed what you heard and you want to stick around for this ride, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell as well to be notified every time I post new content. I post a new episode every other Wednesday. And be sure to sign up for the newsletter. You can do that on the website at www.unpackedangles.com. And you can hit us up on social media as well. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Unpacked Angles. All right, y'all. I know this might have been a heavy episode, but I wanted to be honest, and I also wanted to help be informative and as educational and be just helpful, as helpful as I could be. But yeah, let me know what you think. As always, let me know what you're doing, what you're working on, what you got going on. And until next time, y'all, deuces. Stay healthy.